This is the Power of Public Value podcast from Cardiff Business School. My name is Peter Wells. I am the Pro Dean of Public Value in Cardiff Business School. And today I'm joined by Dr Deborah Hann. Debbie's a reader in employment and employment relations at Cardiff Business School, and her main research interests are the impact of the living wage as it kind of mediates between workers and employers, and how disputes are resolved in the workplace. In this episode, we'll focus on how Debbie has carried the public value message out into her work to engage with and have positive impact on society outside the school. Welcome to you, Debbie.
Hi, thanks, Peter.
Thank you for joining us. Yeah, just as a starter question for you, you've been with us since 2011.
I have.
So that was before we really took on this public value approach. I wondered how you felt that worked. Did it fit what you were doing? How do you think it unrolled through the school?
I think it's really interesting because for me, public value is a natural fit with my research area and my interests anyway. So when the public value strategy was suggested, I was fully on board with it. It really spoke to engaging with stakeholders beyond the employers. I understand the importance of employers, but actually I think, taking into consideration a multitude of voices and groups within society is really important to how we move forward in business and more broadly beyond business. So it fit naturally, it fit comfortably. I think for the vast majority of people that I work with, we thought it was a great idea and spoke to kind of a new agenda in terms of business school. So I thought it was a great idea. And yeah, for me, it worked. It reflected what I was kind of wanting to do anyway. And, to a degree, I thank the school for giving me space to develop a research agenda and a teaching agenda. And I think both of those together fit nicely with the public value.
Yeah, that's something we will, I'm sure, explore in this discussion, the relationship between the research, the teaching, the engagement. It seems that potentially by looking to do this kind of work that has a public value content, you are having to push yourself quite hard. We are going beyond the normal boundaries of academic life in that sense. And I wondered if you had any kind of reflections on that.
Yeah, I guess I'd say two things in response to that. I think the public value agenda has created space within workload to support unusual activity, shall we say. There are space for things like citizenship and engagement, which create room to do unusual things. I would also say that, and of course it fits naturally with things I'm doing anyway, so public value fits with my research and I have time for that. I would also say that, personally I have a passion for this, and workload is important. Obviously, I need to make room for life and family, and work is not everything. But at the same time, when I do things because I believe in them. I believe in the impact they'll have in the society I live in. I think that's important for my children. I think it's important for my children to see some of the contributions that are being made. I've already talked about to my husband about bringing my son along to some of the actions that we do, because I want him to see that impact and I want him to be able to reflect on his place as well. So I think there's kind of two elements. Is the school does make space to support it. It puts its money where its mouth is. But also I think for a lot of colleagues, there's a real personal passion behind this, and we do it because it's the right thing to do as well as being part of our job.
Yes, that's interesting because in many respects, when I hear people talking about work-life balance, that to me isn't actually the issue. It's about finding work that fits your life in a more profound way.
Yes.
Not just having a bit of time here and a bit of time there. And you've certainly sort of demonstrated that. You've brought today a couple of interesting looking props. I wondered if you could possibly talk us through what you've brought.
Yeah, so I think public value for me has taken me in some really unusual directions. And I'd start by kind of holding up and showing you a Valentine's Day card. And I think for me personally, a lot of the journey around public value started with a campaign that was actually run on the university quite a while ago. I can't remember exactly when now, when we did a Love Your Cleaner campaign to get the university to accredit to become a living wage employer. So this actually wasn't research, it wasn't teaching, it was on our own employer. And I was involved in that campaign, leaving Valentine's Day cards to cleaners to say, the university should value you more. the result was that the university did accredit as a living wage employer. We were the first university in Wales to do so. We led the way for a lot of other institutions. As a result of that, we in Cardiff Business School were asked to develop an agenda around the living wage. Volunteered to. And actually, a lot of my career over the last, I would say, 8 to 10 years has been around developing evidence base linked to the living wage. We work closely with the Living Wage Foundation. And it comes from that single campaign where actually we were involved as activists. We weren't involved because we were academics. We were involved because we were concerned stakeholders. We wanted our employer to respect a decent wage. So that's kind of where the journey started. That's where the research agenda started. That led to having engaged with citizens who are involved in the living wage campaign in a research sphere arena, an arena that we're all comfortable as academics. There was conversations around, can we take this further? Can we involve the business school and the university further in the actions and campaigns? Can we leverage their power? Can we draw in citizens, community organising approach to teaching? So there was lots of conversations going around, and I was lucky enough to be given a public value fellowship.
Explain a little bit about that.
So the business school has small funds, not huge amounts of money, but a little bit of money and a little bit of time to explore unusual activities that might support growth in the area of public value. So for me, there was a little bit of fund and a little bit of time available to go and work and talk to and look at Citizens UK, who are a broad-based community organising group, and just work out with them if there was a way that we could create a strategic alliance. And we started, and that's where the second prop comes in. I should probably put this Father Christmas hat on, but I'm not going to wear a Father Christmas hat in June. We started by working with some postgraduate students on an employment relations module in late 2019, I think it was. And we gave them some instruction on community organising, which is basic leadership skills. It's listening, it's negotiating, it's planning. And we worked with that small group of postgraduate students and we ran actions on local employers linked to encouraging them to pay the living wage. And actually, I'm really proud to say as a result, the health board, local health board accredited and over 2,000 employees got a pay rise because of something our students did.
That is absolutely very impressive.
And actually, I think the number of employees and the amount of increase that they got is more than the school ever put in anyway in the first place at the Public Value Fellowship. So for me, kind of Santa Claus hats and getting our students to dress up as Santa Claus and deliver Christmas gifts is where we started saying, actually, this could work. The skills that we're giving our students, you know, in addition to already having the relationship in the research area, the skills that we're giving our student are important, and we can get those students to understand that they can make a difference to the community around them, that they have a responsibility to make a difference to the community around them, and that there can be impact out of the end of that. So for me, kind of Valentine's and Christmas kind of bookends the beginning of the bazaar journey. And, you know, we've run races outside the Senedd. We've had accountability assemblies where we've had all the leaders of the political parties in Cardiff local wards. We've taken people on living wage walks. We've done all litter picks. We've done all kinds of things at the back of it, but it comes from that public value fellowship and a conversation about how can we work more effectively with our local community? And Citizens UK have really facilitated that for us.
Yes, it's a really clear case. I mean, and I think one of the things I should perhaps make clear to our audience here is that you've also successfully published in very highly regarded journals to showcase this work and to show that it has a strong academic value and it has that impact.
And I think that's always been really important. Going back to your question about, you know, me being here predating the kind of business school is, you know, it's been really important to me that my work, it stands for itself academically. I've always, you know, I wouldn't have taken a PhD and come through the academic career if I didn't have a passion for being an academic. I think it's really important that I can point to who I'm helping with the research. You know, I'm really proud of the fact that our living wage research led to an impact case study in REF. You know, we can demonstrate really clearly how we've impacted the Living Wage Foundation's strategy. We can point to the fact we've been involved in helping deliver over £1 billion in uplift to some of the lowest paid workers in the UK. We can show how we've helped impact the strategy of Cardiff as a living wage city. So for me, there's a really strong academic basis, and that's hugely important, but also that academic basis has led to real world change.
Yes, I had no idea the numbers were so big.
Yeah, and they keep getting bigger, frankly.
Yeah, it must be. And yeah, just to think about that a bit more, I mean, in a way, you've been so successful with this work. I wonder, for you, what's next?
Yeah. We keep talking about what's next. I mean, the reality is we could keep ourselves busy just supporting the Living Wage Foundation in the next phase, looking at so they're already around about £2 billion. We've surpassed the 2 billion. We've done 2 surveys with them. We've discussed a 3rd survey in the next couple of years, thinking about the impact of the cost of living crisis. So we've had lots of conversations about how we can continue to support the Living Wage Foundation. I think for us, we'd love to start looking at the kind of other side of it. So the citizens, Living Wage Foundation and citizens work closely together. Living Wage tends to engage with employers. Citizens tends to engage in the community. We'd love to understand the impact on the community a bit more. We've got lots of data around how it helps employers. But we haven't necessarily got the kind of clarity of understanding of what the local community gets out of it. So we'd like to go back to that. We've talked about other standards that have come into place. So living wage hours. The living wage is great, but if you're only getting 10 hours a week, it's of no help to you at all. Living wage pension. So we'd love to start looking at other standards that have come around and thinking about how they impact in the community. I'm also working more hyper-locally. I'm working with a group down in Grangetown, looking at kind of employment relations things beyond pay. So they're young people with very good degrees, but they're still not getting jobs. Why are they not getting jobs? Often it's to do with where their postcode is, what their name is, what their ethnic background is. So there's a lot of sense of, can we look at some of the social mobility stuff?
So why did you focus in on Grangetown?
So again, it's links through citizens and it's conversations through that community. So by creating a strategic alliance with Citizens UK, it's put us in touch with, I would say, 20 to 30 local community groups. For me, being part of that local community group, it's about talking to other people who may never get in touch with the university, who we as academics may never come across, and saying, can we work with you? Can we support you? And when I started talking to, there's a young, I want to call him young kid, but he's in his 20s. And he's just finishing a law degree. A guy called Nurashan, and he was talking about his experiences growing up in Grangetown. And he's clearly very bright and he's clearly very motivated. But loads of the people that he's kind of grown up with have degrees and they're not getting jobs. And he was just saying, it's frustrating. It's really frustrating.
Yeah, and demotivating.
Yeah, and it's wrong. It's wrong. There's all of the big employers around Grangetown. It's very well located. So why are they not getting the jobs? So it was a conversation to say, well, we have expertise in that area. Let us help you look at it. Let us help you think about it. And again, I can see how that can have real world impacts going forward. So it's kind of continual conversations. And I think what's brilliant about Citizens as a group is that they just link you in with parts of the community that need our help.
Yes.
Don't get access to us.
Which makes me think a bit about Ely.
Yes.
Which obviously has been in the media recently with the riots, the death of those 2 young boys on the bike. And the message coming from the community was, well, they're essentially isolated, neglected, pushed to one side, and no opportunities. And here's the thing: if you are successful in your work in a place like Grangetown, you can't measure an event that doesn't happen.
No.
What do you do? How do you measure your progress with this, and how do you measure success?
And that's one of the things we've been working with them. So the Living Wage Foundation is brilliant in that they've got very clear databases about who gets uplift, how much uplift do they get, so they can map the impact that they're having.
Those people may face different costs, of course.
They may.
The cost structure faced by somebody living in those situations, they're the kind of things they have to pay for. If for example, they're on electricity with a meter and they have to put money in every day, it's going to cost them a lot more.
It is. And again, working with citizens, all of these campaigns are going on simultaneously. So I'm involved in a housing campaign with them, partly because it impacts our students. I think there's an issue around student housing, lack of availability, lack of quality. But the housing campaign is not specifically about student housing. It's about housing more generally. And it's about rights of tenants and access to repairs. And so there's a breadth of kind of things going on in there. I think with regard to Ely is kind of, so the project started in Grangetown because of this group of young people who were personally very motivated, well educated, but facing issues, often because they've got the Grangetown postcode. And they had a real sense that they were being told that we don't really want to employ people from your area. So they've worked really hard. They have, it's interesting, if you look at the youth unemployment levels in Grangetown, they've dropped.
Okay.
They have dropped over the last 3 or 4 years. I can't directly say it's because of,
No.
but there is evidence
Right.
that as an area in the southern arc of Cardiff, they're not doing as badly as the rest.
Right.
Where there's concern now is Ely, obviously, but also to the other end, Trowbridge and St Mellons. Now, those are two areas that are quite a long way from the centre. Grangetown and Butetown, they're actually geographically quite close. There's not mobility issues getting into jobs. So that group of people have said, well, let's start working with, there's a group that works in Ely and a group that works in St Mellons. So the Dusty Forge, ACE, Action in Cairo and Ely, I don't know if you know it, it's on the main road through, and they've started working with a couple of people, Jeanette and Dave, who work in there, and trying to see whether they can take some of the approaches that they've built into the response in Grangetown and apply them in a different location. Now, obviously, it's a different area with different problems, and the education levels are lower. There is a geographical difference. It's not necessarily ethnicity, as it often is in Grangetown and Butetown, because Ely is, white working class area. It does feel forgotten and neglected. But I think, again, it's about saying, can we link up these different parts of the conversation and start saying, can we work with you? Can we look at you? And certainly Nurashan and his team are starting to advertise jobs and try and work with the Ely. It's not a quick fix. There won't be a quick fix.
No. But it strikes me, listening to you, that it's all about the networking in the end. And you must know so many people by now.
I do. And it's really, it's nice in some respects in that I think one of the things I really value from citizens, I love my academic life and I love talking to academics and having those conversations. But the rich conversations you have with people who work with the community in Ely, young people from Grangetown. I know the bishop from Llandaff, the archdeacon in Llandaff. I know people I know people in lots of areas, the assistant head at a sixth form centre. And those conversations are rich, and often they kind of allow me to explore issues. So I was talking to the assistant headmaster from the sixth form centres at St David's. And we had a long chat about, is there something that we could do together to help support the transition into university? And it's conversations like that. It is networks. They lead to new ideas, new thoughts, new opportunities. And I really value that. And I think it adds a richness to my work life, to my research, to my teaching. And we do bring it into the classroom as well. We expose our 18-year-old first years to young people from Grangetown. We get them in to talk about what life is actually like for these groups. We get them to come in and say, I've got a degree and I'm not getting a job. You explain to me why. And I think for a lot of our first years, they find that quite shocking.
It's quite an eye-opening experience.
It is. I remember a conversation with them 2 or 3 years ago when we were doing something around the living wage. And one of them said, we were doing a role play and they said, I need the living wage so I can pay for my nanny. We were like, if you're on the living wage, and we actually sat down with them then and did a cost of living calculation. And we said, these are your basics. Your rent would probably be about this. Your food would be about this. Like, you're not going to be left with money for a nanny on a living wage. Like, this is stuff that's just going to pay for you to kind of live. And I think, those are really important lessons that often we forget when they come to university.
Yes. And if they're not exposed to those situations, how can they learn?
Exactly. And I think, especially when we're talking about grand challenges, a lot of students will say to me, can't you teach it to me out of a book? Why do I have to have this conversation? It's like, because I can tell you what the book says, but you won't understand what that means to somebody until you have a conversation about what that actually means to somebody.
Yeah.
And we do get lots of students saying, wow, I've learned a lot about myself, or, and it's the non-book learning that I think is really important. And we do bring that into the classroom.
One last thing.
Yeah.
What's next?
What's next? It's a good question. So more work on the Fair Work project, which is the project in Grangetown, develop deeper links with the Living Wage Foundation and Citizens. It's a conversation of, I guess, what does the school want? What does the school want to support? There are other institutions that are bringing the community organising approach, which is, listen, grow alliances, grow networks, think about how you sit within your community. They're bringing that into the building. We're stretched. We've done as much with the resources we can. So it's a case of saying, is this enough? Or does the school want to go further? Yeah,
that's a challenge, isn't it? As you say, in terms of the resource, I think there's a willingness.
Yes.
At many levels in the school, is whether we are allowed, shall we say, in one way and another.
I think that's just a broader higher education tension, isn't it? Is resources are finite, and it's where we put those resources.
Yes, for sure.
I personally see real value in taking this further. It's just whether the school sees that value as well.
Well, hopefully they will. Thank you very much. We've been talking with Dr. Deborah Hann about the diverse world of social engagement and how we improve the lives of people really at the bottom of the pyramid locally around us in Cardiff. And it's been a very inspiring conversation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Peter.